We're returning to our conference with you. Welcome to those who have just joined us again. We are starting a new part of our event, and I would like to introduce our speaker, our guest. This is Vasily Fanatiev, head of a division in the construction department at Sberbank. So now we will talk with him and listen to his presentation about the experience of using digital technologies. And with me is Alexei Pilipenko, CEO of Laurex. We will now try to find out how things are going with construction at a bank that is also a developer. There are many projects and they are complex. This journey began quite a while ago. It's very interesting to see how it's progressing and where our colleagues are aiming. So Vasily, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Kirill. Yes, I'd like to start by talking about what we do, what we build, about our projects, and generally about how we approach the process of digitalization within our large-scale construction mega projects. It might seem surprising that Sberbank is involved in construction, but nevertheless, that's the case. We have established a rather powerful construction vertical. Basically, you can see the main key metrics on the slide. Currently, we have more than 70 projects underway, and about 4,000, actually more than 4,000 specialists working within the construction vertical. And we are building a fairly large amount of square meters. Overall, our general trend, our main goal is to create a data-centric approach that would allow us to efficiently manage this huge complex, this vast portfolio of projects. That is, at the center, we have a model of the future building or structure, which is used to implement various production scenarios throughout the entire project lifecycle. And in order to implement this approach, we started, as is classic, with strategic planning. We have developed and separately implemented a strategy for introducing information modeling technologies. Its first edition was released and approved in 2020. Then this strategy was updated in 2022 and 2023. We followed standard approaches when developing the strategy, analyzed market opportunities, and looked at what was available, not exactly from competitors. It's not quite correct to call them that, but from our peers in the construction market. We looked at best practices, tried to identify our own pain points and needs, and based on that classic SWOT analysis, you could say this allowed us to develop the strategy that we still follow today. But to be honest, here it says implementation strategy. Lately, I'm not very keen on using the term implementation anymore. It's probably more accurate to call it a development strategy now. We really do need to switch to that kind of terminology because you can't keep implementing things forever. At some point, you have to implement something and then move on to scaling and developing it further. We have taken a very serious approach to developing our methodology, and overall, we adhere to the principles set out in the international standard ISO 19650, especially when it comes to cascading requirements. We try to really understand the logic and spirit of this document, to interpret it and adapt it to the realities of our business and our internal processes. Overall, we are building a fairly coherent methodological system that allows us to effectively monitor the progress of projects and, in general, to work with our contractors and service providers. At the top level of this cascade, we have organized the organizational information requirements in the form of a database of standard forms, requirement templates, and requirement specifications, which are then, during the implementation of a specific project, transformed into the project's information requirements. Then this is further transformed into the classic documents, the client's information requirements, that is the EIR. A package of project documents is formed for the implementation, for the coordination of the project team's work, such as the project execution plan. And various reporting forms are also provided to carry out monitoring and control tasks on projects. Here, a high-level roadmap for implementing our strategy is presented. We have already gone through the stages of implementing BIM technology to address design tasks and construction tasks. Overall, our future goal is cost engineering using BIM technology, as well as moving towards the operational phase. Here, even though all these stages are laid out sequentially and the timeline is clearly mapped out by year, in reality, we are already working on each of these aspects right now. We simply focus on what is currently next in our roadmap. As I already mentioned, we have quite a large portfolio of construction projects. Here are some of the key current projects that we are implementing. This includes the Skolkovo Programa Unique Technopark building. There is also a separate program for building Sber's data centers, since Sber is, after all, an innovative digital company with its own data processing centers. The Sber city office on Kutuzovskaya is also a major program. A new building is currently under construction along with various resorts. Take, for example, the Monjero program, which many of you have probably heard about. So here are some important and comprehensive metrics for our current ongoing projects. For example, to fully understand the immense scale and the extensive scope of these complex sites within the highly innovative Skolkovo Technopark program, we are diligently working on assembling and integrating more than 174 detailed and intricate models. Furthermore, in the Dynamic K32 program, for instance, more than 100 significant model updates are meticulously made and implemented on a daily basis, ensuring continuous progress and accuracy. In other words, the volumes are large, there is a lot of information, many project participants, and coordinating all this without digitalization tools, I think, would be impossible. As I mentioned earlier, we implement various scenarios at all stages of the project life cycle. The classic scenarios such as analysis of design solutions and design review have proven to be highly effective. The thing is, although the slides show textbook examples like the intersection of engineering networks and the placement of technological equipment, in reality, much more interesting challenges arise during the design process. For example, these truly unique facade shapes at the Technopark absolutely require close and continuous coordination between the dedicated designers working directly on the facades and their colleagues who are responsible for designing the steel structures for facade mounting. And because of these complex shapes, coordinating everything can be quite challenging. It's a complex process. Even a mistake of just 1 degree can lead to serious costs. That's why this design review scenario has probably received the most feedback from the business and our key functional departments. Of course, we use information models to calculate work volumes and again to solve various tasks. This includes planning the production program and verifying the quantities submitted by contractors. These same quantities can also be used for plan fact analysis and for building forecasts. Overall, the process of calculating quantities and the opportunities these quantities then provide us have been significantly accelerated thanks to automation and digital tools. So this is also a scenario that has received quite a lot of positive feedback from our key functional divisions of the core business.
While we haven't strayed too far from the design stage, let me ask a question from our colleagues in the chat. Import substitution at the design stage Revit, Renga, or something else?
Oh, that's a tough question, but I'll allow myself to answer it a bit subjectively. The thing is, we have to understand that our market is dominated by Revit, and we have specialists who work with Revit. And when we read all these heated debates about which is better, we can't overlook this factor, because in my opinion, the functionality of the software plays a secondary, if not tertiary. What matters much more is how many trained specialists you have. So until we have designers on the job market who can confidently work in Renga, in NoCAD, it's probably not possible to talk about full-fledged import substitution, not because our vendors are bad or develop non-functional software. I'll repeat, probably functionality in this matter plays one of the least important roles. It's simply a shortage of specialists who know how to work with the software. So for now, it's tough for us, since the entire design market, when we bring in designers for our projects, we have to accept that these designers are focused on working with Revit. So this process is difficult, but it's not that we're against import substitution. It's just that the labor market doesn't allow us to do it, so to speak.
Understood. May I also ask a question? In your requirements, well, I guess this question also comes from the chat. In your requirements, do you somehow restrict contractors in terms of what they use? Do you say it has to be Revit, or do you push them towards a particular software? Or is it more about the end result for you?
For us, the result is what matters. The result is important to us. If the model is not in Revit and still allows us to achieve the desired result efficiently, it doesn't matter to us that it's not in Revit. And overall, speaking about the technical side of things, I might touch on this a bit later. We have our own in-house product development in the form of a common data environment. When designing future functionality in forming our backlog, we focus on using open formats. So overall, if a contractor can effectively solve the tasks at hand without using Revit, that's not a deal breaker for us. For us, the main thing is to solve the business problems.
Thank you. Shall we get back to it?
Yes. Plan versus actual. Well, I already mentioned this partially. The construction model allows us to reflect the actual progress, conduct comparative analysis with the plan, and generate forecasts. In other words, it's a standard set of tasks, and overall, thanks to the information model and the level of automation, this process is, of course, much faster and more efficient without losing any key data. Quality control is also an interesting project. We worked closely with our esteemed colleagues and utilized various advanced tools. This comprehensive approach includes sophisticated laser scanning and innovative augmented reality technologies, so that, for example, with precise laser scanning, you can effectively create a detailed point cloud, meticulously align it with the architectural design layout as clearly reflected in the comprehensive information model, and subsequently observe what significant deviations we might have encountered. Or there's a second scenario where the design model is loaded into an augmented reality device directly at the site of the assembled structure, and there it is checked how much it deviates from the design position. Overall, all of these various tools have consistently proven their significant effectiveness, are currently being widely used, and have been successfully implemented into practice. There is feedback, so to speak, from the business side. As for operation, well, we've looked at various scenarios for using information models in operation. So far, at this stage, we've come to the conclusion that overall operational tasks are already quite well automated, and they have their own tools that fully cover the entire range of the production tasks. Nevertheless, the information model can also be useful here. For example, when we approach the stage of transferring objects to operation, the information model essentially becomes a container, a database that reflects the current state of the object and all the data about the equipment in the systems. If you understand what data is needed for the operation system, we can automatically populate these systems with that data, for instance, by exporting it from the information model. It is, of course, important here to work closely with the operations team to understand what they need and to take this into account when creating the construction model, so that already at the stage when we are forming the as-built model, it contains all the necessary data which can then be transferred to the operation systems. And we have carried out such a project with our colleagues as well. There is an internal operation system that is used by our division. These are the services that operate and maintain our office buildings. That's it. And this project was interesting and successful. I think we will continue to replicate and scale the results of this project. We will keep refining these processes. Moving on regarding quality control, right? So I'll apologize in advance a little here, since there's still time to ask for forgiveness, to apologize. There was supposed to be another speaker here instead of me, as they say. So if it seemed to you that I'm not very familiar with the slides, you were right. I remember now what this case is about. Neural network. You see, the thing is, our requirements are tailored for the use and passing of models according to the classifier. This has its advantages because we can automatically extract the necessary information by the classifier code, interpret it correctly, check it, and validate it. That's it. But it also imposes certain limitations. The limitation is that the model developer has to do the work of classifying each element. Since the models are huge, as I showed earlier, there are more than 100 of them, almost 200 models in the consolidated unified model. The classification volumes there are enormous. So it's logical to assume that this process could be improved by using automatic classification with modern artificial intelligence technologies. And overall, we managed to do that. The models that are uploaded by our contractors, uploaded by our contractors into the common data environment are automatically classified according to our internal classifier. Then the already classified models go through an automatic validation process to ensure compliance with information requirements. That's it.
May I? So it's not the designer who classifies, but you classify for them using this artificial intelligence?
But it's important to understand that under such a tight schedule, not every designer can handle this task with high quality. And so that this requirement doesn't become a bottleneck and stall the whole process, we have this kind of auxiliary tool. But again, there are no miracles here. Artificial intelligence doesn't work instead of the designer, so these results still need to be double-checked afterwards. And a person must also put their signature there, taking responsibility for the result. We help with our automation and digitalization tools, but the specialist must bear the responsibility.
My question was actually about the fact that it often seems to me that design work arises when the designer sets certain requirements, and then these parameter values are used for their own tasks. But how important is it for you not just to check that they filled it out, but to make sure that, well, that a wall is actually a wall, that a column is actually a column, and that it has the correct code according to the classifier?
And indeed, that's how it was from the beginning. Initially, we designed this solution to speed up the classification process. But overall, this site scenario has almost become the main one because we also need to be confident in the quality of the results provided by the contractor.
Yes, I understand. The topic of the classifier is so relevant that colleagues in the chat are also interested in this task that you have solved. How extensive is it? How detailed? And what principles perhaps were used in its development? Let's talk about this. Maybe we can explain something.
Yes, well, when I joined the construction department, one of my first tasks was to develop this corporate classifier. My previous experience allowed me to take on this task. So we used a classifier that was quite large and detailed. It had more than 1,700 entries. But when we started auditing, we realized that such a large and detailed classifier wasn't being fully used in real projects. Yes, it's informative, and yes, it allows you to reflect various aspects of information, and overall you can come up with quite a large number of use cases for it. But it turned out that it wasn't actually used in real processes. So it ended up being a burdensome requirement. We thought, well, okay, since our processes haven't yet matured to the point where we would, need this classifier, let's simplify the classifier to fit the current situation. And based on this, we have formed a number of scenarios for using this classifier. This is the first one, formalization of requirements for the information content of models. The second scenario is precisely for automating interdisciplinary coordination and clash detection, yes, using a clash matrix. That's it. We started gathering feedback, analyzing already completed projects and solved tasks, and realized that for solving our current tasks, we don't need a large, deep classifier. A high-level categorical classifier is enough, literally with about 80 categories and 2 levels. That's it. So our classifier looks roughly like this. 2 levels of nesting, 80 main classes, and well, obviously for a classifier of this size, the task is quite manageable. I mean, I also understand colleagues who ask, for example, what to do if the classifier is much, say, if we take the CSI, right? In theory, you can also automatically classify by CSI, yes. The whole question is how much data you have to train such models. That's it. That's what we'll run into. We had enough data to train our rather modest corporate classifier, and overall it does its job.
So there are no works or work names in it yet?
Not yet, but we are moving in that direction too. Right. We are actively planning a pilot project with our colleagues that would allow us to dive into cost engineering and create a work directory. That's it. Well, I hope we'll be able to tackle this task as well.
So for now, it's a classifier for elements, checked, and if necessary, supplemented using AI.
Yes. So we have a certain set of scenarios in which we use models. These scenarios dictate the requirements for the information content. To compactly package and formalize these requirements, we use a classifier. There's, there's a tool, maybe the listeners are familiar with it, called level of information need. Right. So basically, we have a classic LOINC formed on the basis of the classifier, and 80 classes are quite enough to create it.
Got it. Let's move on.
Yes. Okay. Again, the slides aren't showing up for some reason.
They're just very large and packed with information, so they don't have time to appear. While the next slides are loading, may I ask a question that's been on my mind for a while? It might be a bit off topic, just a little. You mentioned that the strategy was developed in 2020. I think you probably saw the first version because when it was being developed, you weren't involved yet. So 5 years have passed. In a way, you could say the world has changed a lot. To what extent does what was conceived and formulated back then align with the current direction, the current roadmap you showed us?
Mm-hmm.
And in general, to what extent? Well, let's probably stop here for now. I'll add another question later.
Overall, we haven't strayed far from our strategy. It definitely needs to be updated. And I think that in the near future, probably within this year, we'll address the question of updating it. But as I already mentioned, when we were developing this strategy, well, the initial strategy, yes, it really did undergo quite a significant revision. That's right. And what was the reason for that? Again, this is somewhat of a subjective observation on my part, but nevertheless, all our processes related to digitalization, if you track them from around 2013, have been somewhat skewed in terms of strategic planning. This is because strategies and roadmaps were developed based not even on market opportunities, but rather on the proposals of vendors, or more precisely, their distribution networks. That's it. And business, well, it was getting along just fine without all of this. And there should have been a period when the realization of the need for digitalization would come naturally, right? And because the technological capability appeared on the market first, everyone jumped on it without fully understanding how to actually use it. That's the thing. And maybe in the first version of our strategy, this was reflected, yes. We looked at the market opportunities. We didn't fully understand yet how to use them, but based on our understanding of the market's potential, we developed a certain roadmap for where and how we should move forward. As we followed this roadmap, we identified our key pain points, realized that some of what the market offers isn't really necessary or relevant for our specific business. And based on this understanding, we developed the next version. So overall, This version, since it is tailored to the specifics of our business, in my opinion, doesn't require any radical changes. It just needs to be updated. That's it. Of course, a lot has changed since then. For example, the trend of artificial intelligence has emerged, and we also need to take that into account in our future strategy. So we need to develop products that leave digital footprints, allow us to accumulate information, enable us to quickly and efficiently test hypotheses, and as a result, bring some profit to the business. We need to take this into account. If before this strategy was more of an automation strategy, right? Well, now we're moving towards a strategy of digital transformation, digitalization, where data is at the center of everything first and foremost, rather than automation tools as such. Because when it comes to automation tools, things are already going pretty well.
So the last question from this block, what's your personal opinion? I think we're being listened to by companies that have either already undergone digitalization or are currently on the path to digitalization. How important is it to have such a document essentially, an attempt to look into the future at the present moment, to describe everything in the roadmap or strategy? Is this really necessary? And do we need it?
Again, in my opinion, it's a fundamental task to develop a growth strategy and to follow that strategy. And in this development strategy, it's essential to reflect all the key principles that will guide you when initiating a particular project or designing a new product. It's like a constitution at the state level around which all legislative activity is built. It's the same here. A business must have its own strategy clear, well thought out, accepted and understood by everyone, and all further business development should be based on this strategy. Of course, it should be updated and reviewed as needed, but there should be a fundamental document that shows the overall direction of development. Let me give you an example. I participated in a seminar that was specifically about strategic planning, and there was a group exercise where you had to imagine that you were a certain company, engaged in certain activities, and you needed to achieve specific metrics. From time to time, different situations would pop up on screen, like material costs increased, something else decreased, the office burned down, various force majeure events that could happen, and you had to make decisions on the fly. A business like this is much more susceptible to risks than a business that clearly knows its direction of development and, of course, adjusts it from time to time, but nevertheless always has a direction.
Thank you very much. We have very little time left, but I really wanted to ask this question. I understand that Sberbank has its own institutions for implementing construction projects, such as its own technical client and general contractor, but nevertheless, your projects are not carried out alone. You have very complex, challenging projects packed with engineering technologies, and these are major collaborations. And those scenarios for using the information model in collaboration are much more convenient when they take place in a unified digital environment. So the next question is, does it work out? And I know firsthand that it does work out. How did you manage to get your partners to work together with you? Was it difficult? And is there a tangible positive effect from the fact that all of this is happening in such a shared information space?
It wasn't easy. Yes, as I already mentioned, we tried to Operateto develop within the principles set out in ISO 19650 and to build this close network of collaboration between every level of participants. That's right. There are several tasks that need to be solved here. This is, of course, a technical issue, and we solve that by developing our own common data environment. But there is probably an even more complex task, which is organizational and related to implementation, because when you have a tool, it's very important to implement it correctly and to convey the idea, the understanding of the necessity of this tool to all participants in the process. Of course, there are certain barriers and limitations that have to be overcome. And so if this prompt control, monitoring, interaction, and communication are in place, the expectation gap between the client and the contractor is minimized, and accordingly, there is a much greater chance of successfully completing the project within the set parameters.
Thank you very much. Our session is coming to an end. Best of luck to you on your journey with your roadmap and in implementing your strategy. I think that following your track is very interesting, both for newcomers who are deciding which direction to take in terms of digitalizing their own business and improving its operational efficiency, as well as for experienced Vimy users. So Azili, thank you very much.
Thank you, colleagues.
Thank you.